Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Sunday, May 4th, I believe. Yes, I am right about the date. I got the date right. I have some follow up insight to what I was talking about with Trump and his bizarre thing that he did. His, that cabinet meeting he had. And what I want to do here is start off with this and then segue into that, because this is a good example of what I'm going to talk about. So here's Trump imitating a trans athlete and also crapping on his wife Melania, which leads me to believe. Well, anyways, let's start here.
You ever see the weightlifting where they have a record that wasn't broken in 18 years? And they have, should I imitate it? My wife gets very upset when I do this.
Why would Melania get upset when you do this, Donald?
She said, darling, it's not presidential. I said, yeah, but people like it.
Oh, but people like it, so it's okay not to be presidential. See, one of the things I've always liked about Trump as president is that he's not presidential. And I don't like it now because he's a scumbag, right? Like his decision-making, his effects on the country, he's degraded the country, which, the country's already degraded. Like, it's just all these things. Like I said, he's doing God's work by destroying America and, the world. Like he's, so it's, I have, my opinion doesn't matter, right? All that matters is God's will. It's obvious that God wills the destruction of our current system, and this is, one of the people working towards that end. We're all doing it, but he's doing it on a bigger level. But this is just weird, right? Right?
Should I do it or not?
Okay, so let's go back to that here.
Presidential. I said, yeah, but people like it. Should I do it or not?
So he's do it, right? So this is being a bad husband, right? My wife says she doesn't like it. She says don't do it. It's not presidential. And then he goes to a bunch of random fucks. Should I do it or not? My wife doesn't like when I do this. Don't tell her. But should I do it? And should I do it just to whore himself out to the crowd? If his story is to be believed, that Melania doesn't like him imitating this trans athlete. And he's like, yeah, should I do it? I mean, that's the level of your maturity. He doesn't like it when I do it, but what about you? What do you guys think? You guys think, do it? Okay, I'll do it. I mean, if you guys say I got to do it, right? Like, he's just an ass clown. Like, this is not...
All right, I'm in trouble when I get home, but that's okay. What the hell? I've been in lots of trouble before.
Yeah, you banged a porn star, and it came out publicly, and fucking she didn't like that shit and other things, right? I mean, if you bang a porn star, then imitating a trans athlete is no, you won't be in the doghouse as much for doing this kind of thing.
But no,
they're all laughing at things. Immediately, they all thought about Stormy Daniels, right? That's the joke there.
The weightlifting, where 18 years it stands, and they have this young woman, and her parents are right where you are in the front row, and they're so proud of her, and it's like 209 pounds, and she's going to lift that. The record stood for 18, think of it, 18 years, and they put an eighth of an ounce here, and an eighth of an ounce here, little tiny little bit, and she's going to do it. Mom, I love you. I'm going to do it for you, Mom. And she goes... And she lifts.
Is that what she said? I'm going to do it for you, Mom?
And she gets it. And, Mom, I'm going to do it, Mom. Can't do it. And then a guy comes along, or a gal, or whatever.
Or whatever. I don't think about things like that after I'm done with them. I don't ask questions.
A transitions person comes along.
Transitions persons.
And he was a failed weightlifter as a man, but he comes along 206 pounds. They put the little thing on, and he goes, boom, boom. And breaks the record like by 119 pounds. That's not right. The other one is
It's not right. That imitation. I mean, I don't know what Melania was upset. That was.
the swimming. You've heard me talk about it. Great swimmers.
So, anyways, this shows you like everything that's wrong with Trump, right? Because, he complains about the left and left-leaning people, the hyper-liberals. This is if you want to get things done, you can't provoke the left. This is provoking the left. Not that I disagree with a lot of the, the stuff that all this stuff here, in terms of the left. We all know that it's kind of batshit crazy, the whole gender thing that they pushed on everybody. But, the thing is that it's one thing to mock power when if you don't have the ability to change it. But he has changed it. The whole culture has changed by Trump. And if you want it to stick, you don't provoke the other side. You don't piss people off. You don't drive people to the other side, people who are more moderate, by, mocking something that, when you're in a position of power. And then bringing his wife into it. It's just weird, right? And, this is where I segue into the other part. But the right has to understand, and Trump, him and his people have to understand that this is provoking a reaction in the left. The stuff that he does. Everything he does and the way he does it. And not to act like a victim when you piss them off. Like, he's right on the issue, but he's not right to be disrespectful in this way and these things that he does. This isn't over the top, right? And anytime which we'll get into with the PBS thing, anytime that you start, which is what Candace Owens was saying, anytime you take away people's rights, even if it's the people you hate, then they're going to do the exact same thing to you when they get into power, which they will in 2 years and 4 years. The Democrats will be back into power. And we'll see at the midterms, and then at the, this is how it goes. Inevitably, the Dems are going to be back in power, and everything that Trump has done is going to be reversed the way he's reversing everything Biden did. And so if you really believe in what you're doing, you want it to last. And none of this stuff's going to last, right? None of this stuff is, and it's going to, make the world think of America as very unstable, which they already think already. And so it becomes a thing like, how do we get rid of this motherfuckers? They're unhinged. When an empire becomes unhinged and does things that, like Trump with the tariffs, right? Let me switch over to the voiceover here. So, with that cabinet meeting, which all the cabinet members had to tell Trump he has the best 100 days ever, he's the best president ever, and this is the most wonderful thing that's ever happened, when he's failing epically. It's not just some liberal media that's covering his failed presidency in a biased way. Like, he is making horrific decisions, and even his most ardent supporters have to have a little doubt that this guy isn't who they thought he was. Even the people that think he's playing 5D chess, there's some doubt. You can tell there's some doubt in them because they're reacting in the opposite way. They're unhinged in their own way, right? But what I want to add here to what I was saying in that last video is that even spiritual masters, people who have reached a high level of divinity, have people inside their inner circle, like even the best father and mother, even the best, the most loving people, they have critics, right, in their inner circle. They have, jealous siblings, jealous, children who, rebel. There's nobody out there that gets just their 100% positive feedback from the people inside their inner circle. In fact, if you're around like a spiritual master, you start seeing their human flaws. And people have problems with authority, they have problems with God. And so when a person becomes so I'm talking about the best person, like this is, being around Master Chargy, he had people around him and he got a lot of people just got pissed off at him all the time. There's a time where he was told by his master to bring in discipline to the mission because there's a lot of fucking hippies who were doing shit. They were using drugs and drinking and having like sex at gatherings and things that was just like not in a way that was, I mean, just everything being like free love and the hippie movement, lack of discipline. And he's like, well, that's not what spirituality is about. And Babaji couldn't tell you because he had said only forbidden is forbidden because he didn't want people thinking about sin and things in a negative way. But he didn't realize how degraded these hippies were and these other people. And so Charji had to bring in different types of rules. Like he had women and men sit on the opposite sides because you're supposed to forget about your body. It's not supposed to be some like hookup thing, right? And so you're supposed to, not be sitting next to someone of the opposite sex fantasizing about them when you're supposed to be meditating and things like that. And the energies of men and women are different. And so he had the women sit on one side, men sit on the other, and these boomer hippies in Europe and America, they went off on him. They flipped out. And these people who, felt like they loved the master, they loved the, whatever, right? I mean, Jesus, of course, is a more obvious example. He had three people. Peter denied him, Thomas doubted him, and Judas stabbed him in the back, betrayed him. And so, nobody gets 100%, oh, we love you so much, you're the best guy ever, which Trump got in that cabinet meeting because it was fake as fuck. Because we know that Trump has had people, Steve Bannon, who was like instrumental in this getting elected, he turned Trump into a like a fake truther for a little bit, and to embrace these things. Michael Cohen, who was one of his most loyal, I mean, he was his lawyer, he was a fixer, right? He was the guy who fixed all Trump's problems, and Trump's had lots of problems. Chris Christie, was really good friends with Trump. Rudy Giuliani, who Trump threw under the bus and didn't pay his legal bills. Rudy's like left to be on some like horrible, like he's lost all popularity, and he's on some horrible podcast he does where he hawks these supplements and he just starts eating them, like putting them in mouth and chewing them and telling how great he feels. Like he's just, I showed you this video clip before in other videos. And all these people that Trump has thrown under the bus, stabbed in the back, are people who just were, with Trump, John Bolton, all these people. And these, not that I'm saying any of these people are great or good people, but they are like, oh, this guy's fucked in the head. This is, former employees of his. Trump's former cabinet members have written books about what a piece of shit he is, a number of books. And they go on these shows and say, you can't believe how bad he is and what he's like, just totally not like getting it. He's just a nightmare. And yet these cabinet members of, fairly successful people are in there all 100% saying, you're the best guy ever. No, like I said, the greatest mom, the greatest people that in your life, they're going to have one kid or, multiple kids who hate them. I mean, nobody gets like just complete love and adoration, even when they're right. I mean, oftentimes it's the fact that you're right and you say things and, that bother people because people are so fucked up, right? They can't handle the truth. And so, I mean, Trump has this very ardent popularity, very strong supporters, but they're supporting him in their untruthful belief in their own beliefs and their right-wing beliefs and thinking that the left is wrong and they're right and this is what the problem is. If they got everything they wanted and they could just get rid of the left. I mean, anybody who has hatred for somebody and blames that person for everything. And you could have the worst ex-spouse or, current spouse or, you could have the worst boss. I mean, you can have all these people. But, and you could be a great person, nice person, they could just be shitty. But even in that, when there's a dynamic where there's this thing where you just feel hatred for somebody, and you're like, if that person just disappeared, my life would be so much better. And, it isn't. Like, it's not that way at all. And, the left and the right, there's almost no legitimate difference between them because they both act their part to draw in the most amount of people to this binary and have this unresolvable conflict because it's designed that way. That's why they link all these demographics together to get the majority of people. Country people versus city people, and then all the things that go with it. What do people believe in the city? Liberal versus conservatives, and all these things. People want change, not real change, like demonic change, and people want to keep the shitty thing that's been going on for a long time, traditional bullshit around, right? And so, they're both like not getting it, but they're polar opposites, and they have this idea: if we just get rid of the other side, everything will be great. And it's gotten to such a point where it's just going to flip flop back and forth, and you're going to have extremists on either side, right? The left is starting to push extremism, and the right has, Trump has pushed extremism, even though he was a Democrat for most of his adult life, and he believed in most of these things the Democrats believed in, and he hobnobbed. I mean, he was like, butt buddies with the Clintons. Like, they were really close. There's pictures of him and Melania and the Clintons laughing and, yucking it up. I mean, he was great pals with Jeffrey Epstein. Like, all the people that the right hates, the Clintons, Jeffrey Epstein, all these other people that the right is, and Trump was in with them. And somehow they've gotten over that. Like, Trump, like they can't hear it. Like, it's just because they're so desperate to believe that they have it right. And so these things that Trump does, they're so performative, and anybody can see through them, except for the people who are so desperately believing that he's their savior. Let's go to the Pope thing next. So this fucking guy, Trump posts AI photo of himself as the Pope after joking he'd like the job. So, he posted this thing on Gaza, which I've showed you over and over again. And he did this on Truth Social. And, let's get to the photo here. There he is. Like, Trump is not at all spiritual. And the way that he's usurping the position of God, because a godly person would give credit to God, but Trump gives credit to himself. He just constantly, he's the most braggadocious person like ever. He brags constantly, like, it's worse than Kanye. And like, he just is constantly bragging. And you can't really brag when you give the credit to God. Whatever I've accomplished as a person, I'm very clear that before I did the Sajmark system of meditation, which is a system that is like specifically designed to connect people to God with no frills attached, no, bullshit stuff. And it was transformative for me. But I was lucky enough to know that I was an underachieving, incompetent boob that could barely function beforehand, right? So anything that I've done since then, and I have participated in my own, transformation, anything that I've accomplished, I know that I could not have done without the grace of God, right? It's just there. And I don't talk about like this that much because it's I don't like it when you talk about stuff like that all the time. It's just off-putting to people. But I know it's there personally. That without God, you are nothing. You can't exist without God. And I've had multiple experiences with this in meditation and just in observational. Without a soul, your body doesn't exist. So anything you do here is predicated on you need divine energy. And as much as sometimes you don't like what God, God's rules or God's laws or whatever it is, which we all bump up against. We have our own opinions and, our own egotistical preferences. You have to know that to be effective as anything in this world. You have to know that it's all, people say it like Christians will say, oh, it's all glory goes to God, which, is off-putting. It sounds weird to people. But you have to have that internally. And Trump just doesn't have that because he has no belief in God. And so the Pope itself is a flawed political position of power that has nothing to do with God anymore, other than, as much as that anything that's corrupt and evil has to do with God. It can serve God's will in a negative way, just like Trump, in a destructive way, an unconscious way, where they're not actually working for God, but they somehow do God's bidding to destroy something that needs to be destroyed, like a bad religion, like destroying itself, religion destroying itself, right? So this is, it's a bad decision on every level for Trump to do this. And it shows you what he thinks of himself because, somebody does a picture of him as Pope, and he's like, oh, yeah, that's great. Let me post this on social media, right? Like, that's the narcissism here. He thinks he'd like the job. But not that it's a good job and not that the Catholic Church is anything but corrupt, but he's a very ungodly person. And so he posts weird shit on social media. And I would have thought this was funny his first term, but now, like, he's, in full out destruction of the world and the country. I mean, I guess it's still funny a little bit because he's so fucked up, right? But it's just bad, right? It's just bad. It's just bad form. And there's he's like the Antichrist, and he's wants to be Pope, which is, I guess, at some level, as much as he doesn't deserve to be president, he certainly doesn't deserve to be a leader of one of the world's most powerful religions. But that's Trump, and the fact that he does these things and it provokes people, and he's so clueless about the effects of it, right? Like he didn't do it as a joke, like it's semi a joke, but he thinks he's better than George Washington. And George Washington wasn't as great as people say he is, but certainly these guys were much better than Trump was. Anyways, let's move on to the next thing here.
Running as an act is political. And you know who taught me that?
I don't know, it's a dumbass?
Tim Walz.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So this is Hope Walz. This has been floating around the right wing, just the stupidity. Like, Kamala Harris came back out, which was a mistake because she sucks. You could build something off of Trump's suckiness for the first time the next election cycle by just keeping your mouth shut and helping that people forget how bad you sucked as a party that drove people towards Trump. The Joe Biden being, having Parkinson's and having to be ousted at the last minute and then inserting Kamala Harris, all that bullshit that happened. You just have to allow Trump to suck, right? AOC and Bernie Sanders getting up there. But you can't do that. You can't help yourselves because you have nothing. You have no stars. You have no, great anybody. Just, somebody, you don't have your version of Trump that can generate enthusiasm and carry an election. Like, you have people that generate enthusiasm. Bernie Sanders and AOC generate enthusiasm from the far left, but it's, less than 1/3 of the population. You have no chance of winning the election with them. And so you just have to shut your mouths. But they can't help themselves. So the Walzes, Gwen Walz is one of my favorite political figures. She's so batshit crazy. And, remember when Tim Walz was telling everybody he's weird. But then when you looked at him, he's really a weird dude. And his wife's even weirder. And then they have a couple weird kids. Right? And one of them is saying weird shit and not getting it. And just driving, people to say, hey, this is the alternative. Maybe Trump isn't so bad. Like, this is the whole thing.
The first thing he told me when I was first getting into it in high school, granted, I don't really do it as much anymore. I go in spurts. But when I was first getting into it in high school, the first thing he told me was that running is a privilege. And being a part of the running community is a privilege that not...
Okay, so, everybody can run. Everybody has the ability to run. They're talking about this thing here. Like, this running's a privilege. In a sense that everything's a privilege if you say, all right, opposed to what paraplegics can do, right? But you're designed to run. Like, it's just, Sports are sports, and they are, there's running and, competitive nature in them. But you have the ability to run. Like there's a time when human beings had to run all the time for survival. They had to chase after things or run away from things chasing them. And running was essential, right? It's not a privilege. It's your God given body. It's one of the things that you do. It's like saying breathing is a privilege. Drinking water is a drinking water is a privilege, right? So it's none of these things.
Not all people have access to. Whether you do it recreationally or you race a lot or you are, at the elite level, it is a privilege.
It's
Whether
a privilege. Running's a privilege. It's just everything's a privilege. Then I mean, you should be grateful for everything. But running isn't like. I mean, it's not. If I'm not playing sports, that's one of the things that, it was hard for me to exercise. And so as I got older and I stopped playing sports, then I got out of shape because I don't. I like running sucks. Like I don't. I could walk. I like walking. But hiking. But to get the your heart rate up, like I need some kind of something that's like a sport, something that's I mean I still would play sports a little bit now if I had the opportunity to do it. But to say it's a privilege, right? Like this is just this goofy stuff that the left, it's like you're apologizing for being alive. Like the fucking, your dad's telling you, hey, you're going to run? Well, it's a privilege. Told me that my dad. My dad said it's a privilege. It's a privilege that I run.
be you just having the time to run, access like to funds to buy the gear, access to, healthy quality foods that fuel you as you're training and as you're running, access to, a safe, stable situation that allows you to be in a good mental state to be able to run.
Holy shit. Like imagine going through life like this. Now, being grateful to God, that's one of the things I say, be grateful. We should always be grateful, and not just for the good things we have, even more so for the negative things. That there is a plan and there is divinity, and that a sense of gratitude is just it. Not only keeps you humble, but it is it's righteous. It's the way you should be. You should be grateful to God. But this idea of privilege, and how it's based in some unfair, rigged system in your favor, like I've been around rich people and white people my whole life, and they're not any happier. In many cases, they're more unhappy than people who have less money or a different pigmentation in their skin. It isn't a privilege in the sense that you have, the people who have the most, these kids who grow up in rich families, they have lots of money, really wealthy people, but they don't have love and they don't have their parents suck and they have things. There's a difference between having things or having a good family. And so everything can be considered a privilege. You should be grateful for everything. Like it's just to God, not for some bogus system like America or whatever it is. Like it's just a silly way to think about things, right? Because these people who have lots of money. Like, you think it'd be good to be Elon Musk's kid? You think those kids are growing up in a normal situation? Their parents are, weird, famous women, and their dad is, Elon Musk, and there's money there. They all have money. You think that'd be a good, way to grow up? That weird fuck, right? And all the stuff that goes with it. And so, even growing up with a famous person who is a good parent, you're always going to be compared to them. You're always going to live in their shadow. Everybody's got their complaints. And you might say, well, those complaints aren't as bad as, somebody living in the, Palestinian people, right? But, this is not, it's just a stupid way to think about things, right? Like in some way that you're like, yes, you're unfair. You have an unfair advantage as being American. You have a lot of privileges as American on a material level, but a spiritual level, you're fucked. You're not fucked, but it's much more difficult to be spiritual in America for, all these reasons. So, when you have a lot of things, it's harder to focus on God. A person who's miserable, much easier to focus on God. So everything comes with something, like a side effect, right? Consequences.
All of those things are hard to come by. And if you have them and are a part of the running community, that is a privilege. And that, again, was the first thing he taught me.
So he really just sucked the fun out of all of it, right? I mean, that's what he said. That's a conversation. You're not encouraging. Like, running's physically hard, and it's jarring, and it's hard in your body. And it's boring. You know, if you're cross country and these things, I did a little bit. I never thought it was a privilege, right? you know.
So I don't really understand how platforming and administration that cuts mental health services, cuts, funding and literal shipments to food banks, is entirely hurting the climate, because you can get into running in the climate. That's a whole nother thing. But it's cutting, funds to climate initiatives and actively hurting the planet in that way. Sending people away without due process, villainizing minorities. All of those things are preventing people from getting into the running community, which is what...
What? Those things are worse on their own, to whatever extent you're being honest about it. And Trump is doing some bullshit things, right? But it's not about the running community. All these people are suffering and they're prejudiced against, and we're cutting their funds. They won't be able to run, right?
What I thought Kate's platform was for, but it's also just damaging to society as a whole. We should not be normalizing these people. I'm not going to tell anyone what to do with their page, but I think it's insulting to my dad to leave a certain video pinned, especially when he stands for quite literally the opposite of what this administration is doing.
So there's a social media person who I don't know who she is that went in and did an interview with the fake Christian Barbie truther. And, she's reacting to that.
You don't get to both sides this. It's not both sides. We are quite literally talking about good versus evil here, and I'm just really...
Are we talking about good versus... Because that's the face of good right there. Look at this crazy fuck. There's craziness in this family. Look at those crazy eyes. I mean, just look at, dude, bro. And so this whole thing about good versus fucking evil, it's just fucking stupid. Like, stop it. Like, it's not, you're not on the good side and they're not on the evil side. Each person has good and evil in them. Each person has a soul and each person has an ego, and you have an internal battle. And hopefully you win yours. So, hopefully I win mine. In the sense of minimizing the negative or evil tendencies, the selfish tendencies, the hatred, the negativity that's inside you, the anger, the fear, the things that, this is what being a spiritual master, someone who's mastered their lower tendencies. You embrace the higher and you diminish the lower. It's a personal fucking battle. It has nothing to do with anybody else. There's things outside of you that represent both things for you, like for you personally. It isn't a political thing. It isn't like fucking the Democrats are good and the Republicans are evil, or the Republicans are good and the Democrats are evil. It's a childish way to think. It's like politics is the most is evil all in itself, because it's just all ego. There's the people ego run amok, right? Being a political person and wanting political power is somebody who is embracing the egotistical evil inside them, right? The selfish ego. And so, look at, right?
Disappointed the whole thing happened. I was there when that video with my dad was filmed, and I was very impressed with Kate. And this is just extremely disappointing.
Boom, it's just so disappointed. I'm so disappointed in you, right? There was a follow-up here. So I guess it's a follow-up. This is why I didn't watch it yet. This is why you all lose. She's quoting someone, LOL, it must be so scary to live in a world where nothing makes sense, right?
Whenever there's comments that say, like, this is why you guys lost, but really it's just, like, having basic empathy and understanding how the world works is crazy. It's also projection. A lot of times these comments are coming from insecure white men that are so convinced that they are being, put down.
Wait a minute. Who wrote the comment? Was it an insecure white man that wrote the comment? Like, this is your whole thing, this anti-man thing that they have, right? But it is why you lose. Because, you're just as clueless as Trump is about what you have inside of you. Like, when people go on social media, and a lot of it's performative, right? They have their performative things, and and people restrain like some of their worst thoughts. People restraining like what you're doing in your life. You understand this. Who you really are in terms of the darkest level of your personality. Your darkest thoughts, your most negative aspect of yourself, right? And people restrain those things, right? Tendencies that they're repressing. They don't want other people to know about. So they take 1,000 pictures of one thing on social media to get the right one, right? That's, to get themselves looking, at the best possible angle, the best lighting, using filters, whatever. Like trying to sell something that isn't there to their friends and family, like people who are on social media. Look at, I'm not the piece of shit that, I think I am. Look at, I'm something different. Whatever. But then there's when people just reveal what they actually believe on social media and, what they have inside of them. And the Democrats who support all the bullshit that they believe and the Trumpers that support all the bullshit, collectively, the fucked up things. And then they start getting real feedback. Because at the end of the day, you guys think Trump's the devil. So you need to win, right? If you're fighting evil, then you have to win. You have to win as Democrats. You have to find a way to stop the fucking evil. So how do you do that? Like, how do you figure out a way? Like, not saying stupid shit that's going to just be used against you as a weapon, right? Like, if your goal is to stop Trump, then you have to become something that will stop Trump, that will bring in more votes or whatever, right? Like, you have to realize, oh, Kamala Harris couldn't stop Trump. So what does that mean? What do we have to do differently?
Down and targeted in this world, and they're really just insecure because they have everything on their side and they still aren't successful.
So this is those insecure white men. They just suck so bad just because they're white and they're men, and they're white and they're men, and they're insecure, and they say things like, "This is why you all lose," when they're just because they have everything on their side, all the privileges, and they can run. They have the ability to run. It's such a fucking privilege, and they can do those things. And then they're like, "Hey, I'm so insecure because I have all these things, but I'm still a loser, and so I don't know. I'll vote for Donald Trump, and then Donald Trump will be a winner." And my dad will be a loser because he said things like, those guys are just weird, but he got on with Kamala Harris, and they had twice the amount of money and all the media support, and they didn't have to run in a primary, and they didn't have to even come from a democratic process, and somehow people didn't like them and lost because there's so many insecure white men out there. You get it? And so they're the real losers. Like,
So they make up like, this is woke and like all of this stuff, but really it's just projection because they know that they're not good enough.
they're not good enough. They're not good enough like we are, right?
And I genuinely believe the solution is not to like not talk about this stuff, because it's important that the world or that people in this world know how the world works and understands how intersectionality, applies to literally everything. And it's important to see things from an intersectional lens. But the solution is not to like not talk about that stuff. It's to shame people for being terrible. Like, that's the answer. That is the answer. And I actually think that's where Democrats went wrong.
Because they didn't shame the Republicans enough for being terrible. The Democrats have to do more shaming because that's a pathway to victory. You just heard it from the Walsh girl, Tim Walsh's weird daughter, just said you got to shame people more. Like, you got to shame them because that's what works. It works for the Republicans, so it's got to work for you.
They haven't been nice to us for fucking ever. Why are we playing by rules that no longer apply?
Exactly. I mean, shaming, like shame, everyone knows your name because that's going to work.
Call these people out for being dumb and my phone cut off, but call these people out for being dumb
Your phone was trying to save you.
and unsuccessful. Like, genuinely. Get up and get on or get out.
Boom.
Whenever
She's getting it done. Hope Walsh is getting it done. All right. This is great. So this is going to be a back and forth. Well, look at this dude. This is going to be a back and forth thing. This video, I got something else to do on, it looks like MSNBC is doing a hit piece on John Fetterman after all this time, right? But I just want to say this about privilege, like this idea of privilege. You know, you can think that you're blessed because things go well for you. You're healthy, you're rich, whatever you think you have in terms of abilities or, desirable attributes, being, good looking or good athlete or, whatever, right? Whatever you think is, people feel blessed. But with every blessing, there's a curse, right? It's the opposite is also true. And so, this idea of privilege, which is such a big word in the left, it's the wrong way to look at it. The right way to look at it is, that you have whatever you have to complete your job, your tasks. And let's say that you're just smarter than most people, like you have, or you have abilities you're that are, you're in the high end of things, right? Well, maybe it's because you've done something in the past that you've worked your way up through the evolutionary aspect of spiritual existence through multiple lives and things. And so you shouldn't look at yourself as being better. You should look at yourself as being more responsible. If you have something where your consciousness level is on a higher level than the average people, if you have the ability for abstract thought, which over 60% of the people don't have, well, you're there to, then you have to be more accountable, to use your gifts, to use your abilities for the betterment of all. And these are God-given, talents and things, and you have something to contribute, right? And so the right way to look at it is, why do I have these things? What use can I be? How can I serve? So if you take an attitude of service towards God, then there's no idea of privilege or any of these things, right? Privilege is something that you abuse, right? Something where you take liberties with your abilities and you use them to deceive like the masses, which is what her dad, Tim Walz, does and what Donald Trump does, right? They're not honest with themselves, but more importantly, in terms of the public, with people they know they're lying to, right? They know that they do these talking points of things they don't believe so they can gain political power. And so that is abusive, right? That's abusing, one's abilities and taking advantage of to other people that don't have your level of intelligence or consciousness. Anyways,
Elon, a year ago, right now, you were praised by the media. You were championed by the left. Most people in general had a very positive view of you. And a year later...
Wait, has that changed?
Yeah, it's changed a
boom.
little.
What?
So tell me what the last year has been like for you.
Well, it's not been boring, that's for sure. An eventful year, to say the least. At least I didn't get shot, Look on the bright...
Well, who did get shot? You're saying Donald did? Like, this fucking thing. To me, this is the barometer of being a truther or not. Being honest about that fake assassination attempt, right? That staged WWE totally performed goofy fucking thing that they've dropped. Like, only a few people talk about, like this guy. And, it's egregious to be lying about that. It was so bad. Like, most people have forgotten about it. The people who believe in it or were moved by it, or, this whole thing where he did the fight, and the fake ketchup gate. It's the worst. And as a person that claims to be telling the truth, especially a right-wing person, but even the left-wing people won't come out and say it. Because that would mean all these other things are fake, too. All these other things are staged, too. Like, if they staged that, then be like, well, what other things are staged? So the left can't come out either and say it, right? That's why they won't say it, because that means they're conspiracy theorists, and that means they think all these other things are staged too. It's not that this is the only thing that's staged, right? Like, it's just fucking goofy.
Right side. But we have had people shoot up Tesla stores and burn down Tesla cars. I wasn't expecting that level of violence, really. There's obviously been attempts to sort of boycott Tesla and my other companies and basically put whatever pressure they possibly can on me and Tesla and to some degree my other companies. And I guess that's what happens when you go after waste and fraud, because the people that are receiving...
Is that what this is about? You think it's about you going after waste and fraud? You think that's why they're burning Teslas, which, because you're going after waste and fraud. Like, be honest about why people are mad. Why they don't like Trump. Why they, there's a real reason that you're unlikable to those people. Like, it's legitimate. They have legitimate anger. It's not like, nothing's legitimate. Hatred and anger are illegitimate because all hatred is hatred you have within yourself, and the object of your hate is Elon. But I wonder if those Teslas are even being burned. Did you catch the guys? Like, is it the same thing as this thing with Trump? Is a way to get sympathy and pity or this kind of bullshit? Are people really that upset that they're burning Teslas? I mean, maybe they are, but probably they're not, right?
Billions of dollars of waste and fraud want to keep receiving it. The people doing the bad things want to keep getting the money. And
okay, so my wife just came into the room, and she had just found out one of her friends' husbands died. Somebody that she doesn't have a lot of contact with, but somebody that she, they were just a nice couple. And she was wondering, because it didn't seem like the guy was maybe a little bit overweight, older, probably around our age, 50s, 60s, whatever. And they both got sick, and the husband's having a little bit of trouble breathing because he had pneumonia, and she brought him to a hospital. And they did a whole COVID protocol, even though this is like recent, like in the last couple of months. And they gave him 2 pints of blood that flooded his lungs because he didn't need the blood. And he went into septic shock and died. My wife's like upset about, because she was like, we talk about how hospitals are. And again, I'm not saying that, just my opinion of it, where hospitals are where you're going to die. Like, that's how we felt about COVID. And not that there's times I've had good interaction with allopathic medicine. I've gone to, urgent care or something like that for like stitches or something. And there's, times that I've come across healers, good doctors. Just because someone's a doctor doesn't mean they're a healer. But you run the risk of this thing, right? Because like stupid shit like that is done, where like my wife felt like they murdered him. Like this guy was, they killed him, like with their medical treatment, like fucking do no harm, right? But anyways, let's get back to it here. Okay, so my wife and I went for a walk. I got most of the rest of the stuff you're about to see done here. But I want to add it on here, talking about what happened to her friend's husband. So her friend's husband went in, the wife was, they were thinking they were going to get antibiotics. Like he was sick, in a way that was a little bit more than, the normal, like common cold. But he walked in under his own power. There's no thought that he certainly was in a life-threatening situation. Maybe he was having a little bit trouble breathing. He had pneumonia. He had pneumonia or something, right? They misdiagnosed him with COVID. They gave him a blood transfusion he didn't need. His lungs filled with blood. And they did a few other things. 24 hours later, he was dead. Like a complete, where, he was, a lot of things would have had to happen for him to get worse had he not gone into the hospital. There's a lawsuit there, and, she probably will win. There's one of the many issues, one of the many medical deaths that we have, over 250,000 medical deaths, and those are the ones that they count, right? And those are the ones that get reported. They have medical insurance liability for something like this. And clearly, this is the case. And, it's like saying that, there's times you might need the hospital. Like I can't gauge everything from my, from my limited perspective, what other people need and what I'm going to need in the future. But my wife and I were very clear during COVID, in the sense of what was happening during COVID, where hospitals were places that people went to die, right? And, like it's not, a policy that for me has always been try to avoid allopathic medicine, because allopathic medicine isn't something that's worked well for me. And so I've had a few things where allopathic medicine has made the situation worse. But I have times where, you can always run into a healer. Like you can find a doctor that's an actual healer. And so, has a broader view of things. But then there's people who just follow a system. But what my wife and I were talking about is, was this like intentionally done? The idea of depopulation and they have some protocols that are not, the people administering the protocols aren't aware of it, but they're, they have bad intentions. And like, possibly this could be one of those things, right? Like, how does this kind of thing happen? How does this level of like incompetence happen if there's not something else going on there, right? My ex, when my first son was being born, she had a lot of this kind of medical knowledge, had a lot of medical knowledge. She was the most anti-vax person I ever met, but she ended up getting the vax because she trusted Kamlesh Patel, the president and master of now what's called Heartfulness, that used to be Saj Mark, who's just a piece of shit. He's a pharmacist, and he's just, like he's not to be trusted on really anything. But she reversed her whole position. Like I said, she was the most anti-vax person. But because I said to my son, he's the one who told me this. I was like, what? Like, she got it, right? I couldn't believe it, and then he was like, asked her about it, and he said, well, she's still anti-vax, she just believes in this one. And I'm like, this one's the worst one. But she was, when my first son was born, she said that, it was a VBAC, she had a cesarean in a, previous, had a child with a previous marriage that was cesarean. And so there could be issues. And she gave me all these things I was supposed to look out for. They take the baby away and they prod it and poke it and give it shots and put vitamin K in its eyes. It does do all these things. Very unnatural. And the baby's like supposed to be with its mom. And I was unaware of it. I felt like, a lot of times she was intense and over the top on things. So I wasn't even quite sure about it. I thought she was just being a little bit, I don't want to say paranoid, but a little bit over the top, just making more of it than it actually is. And, basically what you're doing is accusing the people of being incompetent and their model being shitty, the allopathic model, which I was never really that fond of, but I didn't, it's like you almost have to go in with a hostile attitude. And again, like each person in each situation is different. I'm not giving advice here. But, that's kind of the way that I look at it, because this woman, went into the hospital with her husband thinking he was going to get some antibiotics. They took him away and did a bunch of shit behind closed doors where she was unaware of and basically killed him, right? And, with that knowledge that can happen, and happened quite a bit during COVID, and people are just following the medical model. They were doing what they're supposed to do. Remember, what's happening with ventilators, people are dying 9 out of 10 times on ventilators. And there wasn't really an overwhelming acknowledgement of how fucked up it was at a time when we know depopulation and the economic issues with Social Security and, globally the idea that this is all these useless eaters and things, is these people at the top of the agenda, and, like there's just suspicion there. And it sucks that you got to go in almost with like an attitude of being like, you're trying to fucking kill me when you're going to a place that's about healing. But like it's, I mean, again, like I said, I don't give advice because each person has a different constitution and different relationship with their health and their body, and some things may need the allopathic medicine as it is now is a very it's like a hammer or atomic bomb. It's something very powerful. It's it's not subtle, right? And some people need that kind of things, and whatever. I mean, each person has to decide for themselves, but we live in a time where the healthcare system isn't something you can trust, because 250,000 people a year, and ones that are reported and acknowledged, because there's many more probably that aren't. There's all the people who are sick because they eat shitty foods that makes them sick, and then they get on pharmaceutical drugs. It's almost like revolving debt. Like you're now just going from one bad situation to another, where they keep on adding drugs because of side effects and the rest of it. So anyways, I mean, that's, again, like, it's just this situation the way it is now is like fucked. From the standpoint that if you're sick and you don't know what to do and it's maybe something severe, you should just be able to like go to the doctor or go to the hospital or, go somewhere and have confidence in the system. And maybe you do, and I don't want to, some people might need the system. I don't know. Like everyone's got their own thing, right? A lot of people are, just relying on mainstream stuff, and you have a system that's based in, whatever. Like, it's each person has their own situation, like I said. But many of us don't trust it, which sucks. If you can't, like, trust the system, and then what do you do? Like, if you're, a lot of healing has to do with trusting the doctor, trusting the medicine, or what have you. And a lot of us just don't have that. So, anyways, let's get back to where we're, back to the Elon Musk thing here.
You're necessarily dealing with an unsavory group that is, since they're doing illegal things already, and we're stopping them from doing illegal things. Obviously, they're going to do bad things to me and to my companies.
What are you talking about? You got the president and you have law enforcement. These are fucking felonies. Like, you're saying there's no rule of law, that these people that you're withholding their money are burning down Teslas and going after you. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? Right? If that's the case, then we're like, we're going to need martial law or something, right? Like this, they're not. These are mostly just, these are do-nothing people who are taking advantage of their job as a federal employee. I mean, the ones that you would be talking about, or maybe scamming it, right? But they're not, these aren't murderous people that want to go to jail, felons. And you should prosecute all these people. Make examples of every person that defrauded the government. You should go after them one by one. Like, that should be like, that could, where these cases would be heard in the public. Or even going after some of the big ones where legitimate evidence is presented, not bullshit things where you call somebody a gang member with no real legitimate evidence, right? It's funny how this guy, I get tweets every day about how this guy, mostly from Republican sources that Twitter recommends because they don't really push the Democratic stuff on me. But, they talk about this guy, whatever his name is, the guy who went to the El Salvadorian prison. Like, the left is talking about him like he's a saint American citizen that was, wrongly deported, and that he should be a functioning member of the American society, even though he came in illegally. And the left and the right talks about him like he's some criminal who said to his wife, I guess it's a new revelation, that he said to his wife that he could kill her and get away with it. So, like, he's not a saint, but he isn't like a fucking criminal because he hasn't been convicted of any criminal offenses. It's just how both sides use this guy. They don't give a shit. Either one doesn't give a shit about him, right? Just to get the other side. And that's how fucked our society is.
It's somewhat inevitable, I think.
Do you regret doing what you've been doing? Do you regret coming out and supporting President Trump?
Yes, no.
Cut that part.
I
hope not.
Cut that part. He's so fucking cringy. He should be called Eli Cringy, right? He's just the cringiest of the cringe.
No, I think it was essential for...
Like, when you feel something, like, inside you, like, he's embarrassing you as a human being, like, that kind of stuff.
President Trump to win to ensure that America remained great. And that we...
You mean that we will remain abusive in an empire where we could take other people's resources, right? and live a better life because we're beating the shit out of other people and we're rigged the system against them and for us, right? That's what America great again?
Reach greater heights. Really, some very basic things need to happen. We need to have, obviously, a secure border. We need to have safe cities. We need to have sensible spending. I think if President Trump had not won, I think the Democrat campaign to import vast numbers of illegal voters would have succeeded.
Boom, it would have been permanent Democratic Party.
They would have naturalized vast numbers of illegals during the...
Okay, the only people that would want these T-shirts passed out, like, who do you think passed out these T-shirts? You think the coyotes that get people across the border passed these out? Or was it the Republicans that said, hey, free T-shirts, you wear these T-shirts, Biden will let you into the country? Are these even people who are in Mexico? Are these people who are in, like, there's just a bunch of Mexican people or Hispanic people they found in America, the Republicans, and paid them to pose for this thing? And they're wearing the masks, too. They all wearing masks. Why are they wearing masks? So, I mean, what is this, right? Like, that's March of 2021. So, how is this they got every one of these people to wear a shirt that they don't know what it says. Many of them don't speak English. And if they did, they don't read English. And they got all of them to wear these shirts. Like there's people behind them without them. And they got them to sit there like they're in the border, right? Like this is just a horrible, like, bullshit picture. It just doesn't make sense that this is happening. Biden, please let us in. Seriously? Like do you think those T-shirts are going to work? You're going to get in? Or is it some kind of thing that the T-shirts only benefit the Republicans?
The sort of Kamala regime, and they would have turned America into a one-party state from which we could never escape. Some people out there may be somewhat skeptical. They may think, well, that there isn't some Democrat plan to subvert democracy and achieve a permanent one-party, deep blue socialist state. And I assure you, the more you research it, the more you will see it is true. Biden was simply asleep at the switch. He was ineffective.
He's asleep at the switch.
Regarding illegal immigration. No, he was highly effective at ushering in millions of illegal immigrants with a specific game plan to naturalize them and ensure that there would be no swing states in America anymore. Often the margin of victory there will be 20 or 30,000 votes. So if you bring in 200,000 illegals, which will overwhelmingly vote for the Democrats.
Because first of all, how do you know they're even going to vote, right? How you know that they're going to be somehow loyal to Biden? Like this idea that this was done or not done was sure it could be done. Like the Democrats would do it, yes they would, they totally would do it. But it working and them getting away with it, and then the people who Trump won more Hispanic vote than any other former president. Like he got more Hispanic votes. So it's all of these things, right? And so a lot of these people coming in are highly religious, deeply Catholic people. You think they're going to be psyched about some of the gender things that the liberals are pushing? No, of course they're not. And so it isn't like, it's the whole thing. It's just fucking stupid. Let's move on. Just ass clownery. I just want to remind people, let's get to this Fetterman thing here.
I first interviewed now Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania on this show just about 10 years ago. It was back in the fall of 2015. He was running for the Democratic nomination in the Pennsylvania Senate race. I got to say, it seems like you've done great work there, but it's a town of 3,000 people. Sure. That is a very, very big leap. What makes you qualify to be a U.S. Senator going from this position, which is a pretty on-the-ground position?
Sure. Well, I think it makes me uniquely qualified because all of the issues that we have dealt with in Braddock, again, inequality, safe community policing, and healthcare, all these different challenges are just the same issues, but we're going to scale it up to.
You're a mayor of 3,000 people, right? And he's going into the state senate. Clearly not qualified, but who is, right? These are corrupt positions.
Statewide, it's the same game played in a bigger stadium.
Fetterman was a fascinating guy. Is a fascinating guy. He was the mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania.
He's fascinating. This guy is fucking fascinating. He is fucking fascinating.
In a small town just outside of Pittsburgh. And Fetterman lost that Senate primary race in 2016. He then went on to be elected lieutenant governor, and then he won the Senate primary in 2022. And that year, I was able to speak with him again as a Democratic nominee, just 4 months after he suffered a stroke on the campaign trail. He's now the senator from Pennsylvania, and the last time he was on this show was in September.
Remember when he adopted the porn stash?
2023. We've not spoken to Senator Fetterman since then, but today, a new article in New York Magazine gives a really eye-opening and at times profoundly unnerving look into Fetterman's world, from his health, both physical and mental, his politics, and urgent concerns among those closest to him.
You need an article for this. So they're doing a hit piece. This guy promoted Fetterman. They like this guy. He's a different kind of guy from Pennsylvania. Weird fucking tattoos. Looks like he's some kind of Satan worshiper, some kind of heavy metal. His wife looks like a fucking witch, right? And he's all the stuff that he had. And then he had a stroke and he had the worst debate performance we've ever seen. Good night, everybody, is how he introduced himself, right? And then all the other things. and he showed that he isn't mentally competent. And he showed every possible way he was unfit for office. But Dr. Oz was such a piece of shit, and that the Pennsylvania people voted for a guy who was obviously mentally and physically incompetent to do the job. And then he came time for him to swear in, and he got depressed. And he couldn't understand people. Like, he had processing issues. He couldn't understand you if you were talking to him because his brain was all fucked up because he had a stroke. And he got depressed and suicidal. They had to put him in a mental institution. You know, he talked about missing his kids' birthdays, all these things. He was supposed to be sworn in. He got sworn in, and he, in this process, and immediately he went on vacation. He went and took a leave of absence and refused to be couldn't be a senator because he was a couple of months just working through his mental issues. He came back out. He was babbling incoherently. He had the clothes issue, which I thought was, didn't bother me, but it was fucked. He wouldn't wear a suit. And he stood out at all these meetings, and he would say fucked up shit because he didn't understand what's going on around him. When people talk to him, it sounds like the parents in Charlie Brown. Wah, 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 wah. That's what he said. So they started to have him read a tablet that would translate what people, voice-to-text stuff would translate what people were saying to him in words that were big enough for him to read, and he would still have trouble answering questions, and he was just fucked up, right? And after all that, showing that this guy was mentally and physically incompetent and depressed and suicidal and just wasn't functioning as a senator, he stood out. And he still was celebrated by Biden, these other people. And, he would come out and babble and everyone would ignore it like he's fucking, like it was normal. And then the media's all of a sudden now covering him because he's like saying, let's give Trump a chance or whatever it is. I mean, they've turned on him here. This is, like I was going to say, this is Sunday, May 4th. Beautiful day outside, probably most places around the country. There's playoff basketball on. There's, whatever's going on. Weekends, people are going out, doing things. And usually the weekends, there's no news. The news isn't really worth watching. They have maybe some better stuff than they normally do because, they put their sort of extremists or people who are, aren't as, shiller. They're not shilling as much because it's a weekend, nobody's watching. But, there's no big news events that happen. And I can't cover all the things I have up on today. Like, it's just, like, this guy's a senator. And he shouldn't be. Like, it's just, we've known this. And it's just one amongst many fucked up things that are going on out there.
Joining me now is Ben Terrace, the Washington correspondent for New York Magazine, who reported out that article. And Ben, I have to say, this was one of those pieces that I had my jaw on the floor for much of it. It's an incredible piece of reporting. So thanks for your excellent work. I mean, the major headline here in what is a very long piece is that some of the people closest to Senator Fetterman, really close, are extremely concerned about his well-being and mental health.
Yeah.
Like you need a fucking article. I mean, just look at the motherfucker, right? I mean, this is just how bizarre and bad. The guy could not articulate sentences. Good night, everybody. I mean, like, that should have been it. Like, fucking, and the Biden administration said, after the debate, you know what? The polls are out, and we didn't really lose anything because of the debate. After watching that debate performance, the guy was mentally incompetent. The guy couldn't do it, and he wasn't great beforehand. And, you guys ignored it. And then all of a sudden, like, of course this is the case. The guy needed a tablet to understand what people are saying to him. He's in a high-level, high-pressure position. He doesn't know what the fuck's going on around him. He can't have a conversation. People are talking to him and he doesn't understand the words. He can't process other people talking. He can't process the words that people are saying to him. Like, he's fucked in the head, right? Like, this is, like, why are we even talking about this? Like, the guy shouldn't be senator. I mean, I love that he is. It's not my, I mean, for me, this is great because the government's a joke. This media's a joke. It just proves me right time and time again. Every time the guy opens his fucking mouth, it's not about just him. It's about the cover-up and, even the Republicans. I mean, the guy, this isn't about, like, mocking, which, he's great to mock, or any of these things. This is about the guy being not mentally competent to do his job, right? If he did I used to say this about Joe Biden. Would you let Joe Biden drive your kid's school bus? No? Then why would you give him the nuclear codes? Jesus Christ, right? So It's pretty obvious that these people are not competent. You say thing about Trump, it's harder to see with Trump. But these are mentally ill fucking, when these people talk, all of them, all these politicians, all these people, you're like, oh, these guys are all fucked at the head, right? They're not right. They're not functioning.
Yeah, that's right. It's, it was a really hard story to work on, to be honest. It was a sad story. These are a lot of people who truly believed in Fetterman for a long time, and some of them have political disagreements with him now, and a lot of people want to make this all about political disagreements. But these are people who are genuinely worried about him. They had a hard time working for him, and they want to see him get back on his recovery plan. They feel like he has fallen off the recovery plan that he was on.
The guy should not be in a recovery plan when he's a senator, and he's a young guy. Like he's young for a senator. He's one of the younger ones, right? What is he? Probably in his late 40s or something. I don't know. But, the guy's not, we saw this with, like, Mitch McConnell, like, glitching out. And, they had to roll Diane Fetterman in with a wheelchair to say yay. And she didn't even know what she was voting for. Like, they had to, she was like, she looked like a ghoul. Her eye was all fucked up, remember? She was about 6 months away from dying. And they rolled her in there in a wheelchair. She said yay, and she voted for something completely not knowing what it was, right? We know this with Joe Biden, and we know this with like Trump. They don't even listen to their people. They don't even know what's going on. They're watching shit on the news, and they don't understand it as the issues as much as the average American citizen. There's lots of these people are being completely handled, and they don't have the mental function or capacity. And we see these people all the time. We're like, how is this person successful in politics? How is this person running a governor or a senator? They're all fucked up. They're all fucked up, right? And Fetterman's like the most fucked up of all of them. Like he's more fucked up than Biden, more fucked up than Trump, right? He can't, like, again, somebody who needs an electronic device to translate English, his natural, his whatever they call that, language of origin, right? Like your main language, your whatever that term is. And he needs that to be translated by a tablet, like an electronic device who it somehow turns it into words that he reads because he has auto processing issues, right? You can't process things that being, like his ears are fucked up, right? Like he can't, he's got to read what people are saying. So he needs subtitles for his native language. The native language, that's what it is. He needs subtitles. Like he needs, like he's watching something in in American speak, and somebody's a Yinzer, with these Pennsylvania people that speaks with the same dialect and same the way that he does. Even his own, if he was watching himself talk on TV, he would need subtitles. Like that's not somebody who should be senator, right? Like fucking why are we even talking about this?
Basically, this is someone who had a stroke in the campaign, had to come back from that stroke and go campaign, even as he is having severe auditory processing issues as a result, which is a nightmare if you have to talk all the time.
Yeah, that's just what I just said. They should have, and you guys let him run. You should have said, no, this guy shouldn't run. But you didn't want Dr. Oz to win. And if Fetterman left, you had no chance of winning that seat. And so you let a guy, like he just mirrored what I said. But you guys all knew about it. You're admitting you knew what I know now. And the rest of us, you even knew more about it. He had auditory processing issues. I didn't even watch this. This is me just watching this for the first time. And I just said all that stuff. And then he says exactly what I said. But the only difference is I would have said, pull the plug. And I said, you can't let this guy run. Like, it's just wrong. And media should say, no, this guy shouldn't run. Like, let's listen to this fucking guy. Go back here.
Which is a nightmare.
Go a little bit farther.
Even as he is having
even more
stroke and go campaign, even as he is having severe auditory processing issues as a result, which is a nightmare if you have to talk all the time. He manages to get elected, and then he checks himself into Walter Reed for 6 weeks for depression. What are the people closest to him seeing that has them so worried?
Well, at the
time... What
time...
the fuck are you talking about? Just what you said. Like, that's fucked up. And he was suicidal. Remember, he wanted to kill himself. And he said that it was the success of winning that made him suicidal. And that made him flip out even more because he knew he wasn't mentally competent. Imagine if you couldn't understand words. And then you had to do, like, and they're like, oh, you're going to be senator. I mean, never mind being like a paper boy or something, like some low-level job. I mean, if you just had a stroke, you can't do shit, right? and maybe never again in your life. You know, Greg Popovich, a famous basketball coach, is just retired because he had a stroke and he can't come back and do that job. I was like, why are they even talking about him coming back? He's old as shit. He's like late 70s, almost 80, something like that. Famous coach. He's been coaching forever. He had a stroke. And then he was trying to work his way back to the sidelines to coach. And I'm like, that's a high-pressure, stress job, and you've had a stroke. It's over. A severe stroke, right? Your mental functioning isn't there. And so, you know, like, he couldn't do this job, and everybody should have said it. And the Democratic Party, with any responsibility, and the Republicans would do the exact same bullshit, right? And so, of course, this is the end. Now you're talking about this? And it's still, even with them reporting on it now, he's not stepping down. His wife and everyone could come out and say, yeah, he can't fucking do it. He's not mentally competent. And they don't really have a way to get rid of the guy, right? The Democrats certainly don't want to lose a seat if they have to have a special runoff election. And so they're not going to get rid of the guy. I mean, as bad as he is, this is how fucked up we are.
I am right. That was a really worrying time because he had to check into Walter Reed to begin with. And as I report in the story, he, you know, kind of had a little bit of a break, I'd say, where...
Look at this fucking picture, this fucking guy. This is a senator, all by myself. This Gru, you know, George the Animal Steele, Uncle Fester, Curly on the Three Stooges looking motherfucker, right?
He no longer could do the job without getting help. So he goes to the hospital, and at the hospital he gets treatment. And when he comes out of the hospital, after kind of a harrowing visit there for a while, he levels out, and things are good for a long time.
They're not good. They were never fucking good. The guy could not speak. He was on The View reading from a tablet. He couldn't understand the fucking complex reasoning of the View bitches. Right? They were over his head. He couldn't understand words. Like, he was running meetings. Everything he did was a joke. And it wasn't a joke because he's fucked up after a stroke, because that's, you know, that's cruel. It's a joke because you guys pushed him into being a senator, and the people around him, his wife included, didn't say, hey, we got to pull the plug on this. It's over. He can't do the job. Not for himself and not for the American people. It's not good for him. It's not good for the fucking Senate. You turn the Senate even... I love these things. I love it. I love when they turn the Senate into a joke. I love when they make politics be, like, fucking goofy. But, you know, like, don't pretend like you didn't know, because everyone knew.
And everybody that was working for him is really proud of him. They feel
like a little kid. You're proud of a little fucking 4-year-old because he can't fucking function. Good job, boo. You can now read free from the tablet. You know, like, you're fucking condescending bullshit. Right? Pat him on the fucking head, right? Because he couldn't fucking do his job. Like, he's not, you know, he couldn't do any job. Never mind being senator. You know, which is a lot about it's talking and listening. And he couldn't do either one of those things.
Like, he's done a really important thing here. He has helped destigmatize mental health. He's proven...
No, he didn't. He fucking didn't do that. Like, don't pretend that was fucking a good thing. Like, he didn't do that, right? He's a poster child. And then when he turned on the Palestinian people and his liberal voters, because he was so fucking, like, wrong on that issue, he's the worst of the worst. And he didn't understand who these people were. They were his most ardent supporters, the real liberal Democrats that were concerned about a genocide. He was just completely on the wrong side of that. Remember that shit? Like, he just not destigmatized anything. He's made a joke of the fucking Senate and the news media and all the people that, you know, allowed this thing to fucking happen, right?
Proving that people who have mental health issues are able to do this job if they get...
No, they're not able to do the job. This is the whole fucking point. You're not able to do that job because the fucking job, you know, you learn to talk and listen when you're a baby. You learn to process other people's words, and you learn to say your own words that they are coherently able, you know, as you get older, they get better, and you can make your needs met. You know, your inside world, what's going on inside of you, you're able to verbalize it to other people, right? This happens, you know, pretty much by the time you're 3-4 years old, you're able to understand other people on a, you know, primitive level, childish level, understand your parents, and they understand you. And so he can't do that. Like, as a 3 or 4-year-old, he needs a tablet. He can't fucking articulate things. You don't know what the fuck he's thinking. You guys are pretending like he fucking destigmatized mental illness. That he showed everyone he could do that job. No, he can't do that job. So this is what I was talking about here.
Lieutenant Governor, you're running for a seat that could decide the balance of power in Washington. What qualifies you to be a U.S. Senator? You have 60 seconds.
Hi, good night, everybody.
Holy fuck. That should have been it, right? Like, that should be it when you introduce yourself and you're supposed to make a case why you're supposed to be senator. You're just recovering from a stroke. And you're, very contentious for election in a swing state where you decided as lieutenant governor, a lot of the stuff to do with the ballots. Remember, when the ballots were happening with Trump in that 2020 election, they had mail-in ballots that they've never seen before because of the COVID thing and the shutdown of the economy and the lockdowns and all that shit. And they decided to go with mail-in ballots. And a month ahead of time, Pennsylvania was completely lost in how they were going to deal with all these new mail-in ballots. Like, they didn't even have a plan, and they were, like, kind of freaking out. And then this guy was in charge of counting them and all these things. Like, he was in charge of the process. He was lieutenant governor. And he became a national media figure then. And these Democrats decided to run him because he was, stood up to Trump and the people or whatever it was. And then he had a stroke. And he comes out, he says, "Good night, everyone." He says this shit here.
60 seconds.
Hi, good night, everybody. I'm running.
Good night, everybody. Like, this guy can't fucking understand. Like, he's inarticulate. And, probably nervous and things. And then, all the things that have happened to where we are now, like where they're reporting on this. They should have pulled the plug then because this was what was going to happen, 100%. There was no fucking miracle story here. There's no fucking Disney movie here. There's no fucking handy-capable thing here. This is a fucking guy who, this was going to end up exactly the way that they're reporting on it now. He wasn't able to do this fucking job or any job. He had a severe stroke and he was impaired. And holy shit, right?
Treatment. But over time, some of the people that I talked to started to believe that maybe he wasn't as good as he had let on, and that behind the scenes, they were having a very difficult time with him where he would...
Of course he wasn't. Like, that's every fucking body. So everybody pretends they're better than they are. How you doing? Oh, great. People say, I'm okay, whatever. Whatever they say, you should subtract from. Because, unless somebody's beaming, glowing happiness and competence and things like this. But if people like this guy, of course he was suicidal and depressed. Jesus Christ, they're going to wrap this thing up. It's just, it's so bad. Like, I'm like going in on this thing because it just shows you what's wrong with the media. Like, this report should have been written the day that he walked on the debate stage and said, "Good night, everybody," is his first words. "Good night, everybody." So that should have been it. He just introduced himself with the words, "Good night, everybody," which is something you would do at the end. He did it at the fucking beginning. And then he just proceeded to babble his way through there. And Dr. Oz sucked so fucking bad, and the Pennsylvania people disliked him so much that he didn't gain anything from that fucking debate performance. And they were like, "We're going to go with this guy anyway because he's not Dr. Oz." It was like the way they campaigned against Trump. And then this guy proceeded to not be able to do his job because he was suicidal and depressed. And then it came out that he couldn't understand anybody. And, this is a high-pressure job. So that should have been it. Like, it should have been called way in advance. So if there's any fucking reasonable people, you don't put somebody like that in a position like this. And so, unless the positions are jokes. And that's why I love it, because it's a joke. Politics is a joke, and media is a joke. You guys all are fucking clowns, right? You're just fucking ridiculous. Good night, everybody.
Shut down. He wouldn't do the job. There would be days where they'd have to clear his schedule so he wouldn't kind of be around people saying what...
"Oh, this is a fun... I would never have figured this." Of course this was the way it was. The guy who was, if you are mentally incompetent and you have a high-stress job, I'm sure he gets headaches and all that other kind of shit, right?
Described as unhinged stuff. Eventually it got to a point where one of these former staffers sent a long email to Senator Fetterman's doctor to kind of, I don't know, I'd say ring the alarm bell that things weren't going well.
That's Adam Jennelson, the staffer who's named in the piece that you talked to. I should say you talked to him. You also talked to Fetterman himself. You talked to people around him. Fetterman does speak to you for the piece. Jennelson's been a frequent guest on this program. Here's just one little bit of color. This is Sherrod Brown right before that hospital admission. or I guess a week after his hospital discharge, Democratic Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown came to pay Fetterman a visit in his new Capitol Hill office. Their meeting went awry. Brown tried his best to get a conversation going, but according to two people present, Fetterman was virtually catatonic. He was doing essentially kind of figure eights up and down and not talking to the senator. This really freaked out a lot of folks. And
okay, so I saw enough, right, that I knew. Like, I mean, all right, so I have a background I have a master's in counseling. And so I did really well with diagnostics. Like, I naturally took to that, like, giving diagnostic testing in terms of being a, counselor using the psychological method. And I was always good, introverted, and, I'm dyslexic, and I see patterns, and I could just sense things about people. Like, I have this, ability. And, whatever. I have that. And I saw more than enough to see that this guy was not capable of doing this job. But I see that with all these people. But he was by far the worst. And then he had a stroke. Like, even before the stroke, he was like a nightmare. But after the stroke, it was clear the guy couldn't do the job. And it wasn't going to get better by being in this high-pressure job. But someone visited him. This guy visited him, another politician, and sees that he's doing figure eights in the air and he's catatonic and can't talk. And like he's out of it. And they're probably all drugged up and all that shit, right? Which, he's supposed to be on multiple psychological drugs, which in themselves would preclude you from, it's like being stoned all the time, right? You're not like you're not, it's a veil on your consciousness. And so, Jesus Christ.
And was that part of what got him in Walter Reed, or that was after Walter Reed?
Yeah, that's right. That's what got him to Walter Reed.
Right.
So before that, he had a moment where he had to go to George Washington because he was suffering from dehydration and was at a retreat and kind of wandered into the street and was almost hit by a car, according to my reporting. And
okay, so, I'm going to end this here. I mean, there's just, it's kind of almost worth watching because you're giving us new information. But there was a guy, now I sensed this with Joe Biden, that he was mentally incompetent because he was walking off a stage. He was getting angry. He was calling people fat. Like he said, shut up, fat. Like he gave the guy the nickname that he's fat, right? Like he said all those things that I documented. He lost it during the debates. He was wandering off stage. He couldn't keep a coherent thought. He was clear he had dementia. And then, about, 6 months ago or so, when they were kicking Joe Biden out last July, I guess it's almost a year now. Right after that thing, they were kicking Joe Biden out. It was July, August, right before they kicked him out. They had a doctor on MSNBC, and the guy was specializing in Parkinson's, and he talked about differential diagnosis. You talk about the things that you would see in somebody who has Parkinson's versus someone who has Alzheimer's. And everything that he said, the way that Joe Biden stiffly turns around, had specific lingo for it. Like somebody who knows what the fuck they're talking about because they deal with this all the time. Like Parkinson's is a real thing. And he demonstrated and they showed clips of him. And, the reporter who's a fucking bonehead goes, well, you have to be pretty, well-versed in order to diagnose him with Parkinson's. He said, a first-year medical student should just be able to do it as soon as Biden would walk into the room. That all these things that he's demonstrating are classical symptoms of Parkinson's. And I understood that from my own experience working as a counselor in these things. And people who work with these things, you just see it. They just see all those guys over here. They go over their your in-law's house, and their mother-in-law would be demonstrating something. And the guy would look at his wife and go, holy shit, we got to get her to the hospital and we got to get her diagnosed. She's got early stages Parkinson's. Like they see it. You just fucking see it, right? And it was easy to see with Fetterman. We all saw it. But they fucking forced this thing anyway. The Democrats. I mean, this is, and they're no worse than the Republicans because they would do the exact same fucking thing, right? And the media would go along with it. Fox would go along with it as a Republican, and the Democrats, MSNBC and CNN went along with it because that's what they do. And it means our whole system is completely fucked in the head, right? It is 100% fucked in the head. Let me play my meme here.
I think you're all fucked in the head.
Okay, so believe it or not, I have like 3 or 4 more videos to go here. The extinction level event, NASA, Bill Nye proposed trumpet cuts. These are some of the events here. SCOTUS feels intimidated, scared over Trump going after the judges, targeting judges. And then the Prime Minister of Canada, and then another couple of videos and some other a whole bunch of stuff. I can't get to it all. But I'm going to stop here. I have one comment I want to read that goes with all these things, right? But the whole idea that, everybody's fucked in the head. This is the whole thing here. And so there is a comment, I think it is here. This one. It is what it is, Paulie. You are who you are. Ought to be more grateful instead of telling us how much you despise our company. You know? No, I don't know. You are somebody many of us look up to. Many of us don't know anyone else like you, Paulie. It's a travesty. You know what I'm fucking saying, Paulie. Love you, buddy. No, I don't know what you're saying. I have no idea. I'm totally clueless what you're saying. This is you being completely in your own feelings and being butthurt and triggered. I would assume you're a Trumper. And the video is entitled, I do not know how Tucker was this big a piece of shit. Trump, Bezos, and Miss Terrace are attacks. So this is somebody who is listening to my video and I say something and they write a comment like we're having a conversation that I know what I just said because they're offended by something I said, right? And, this is me being like over functioning in my ability to understand nonsensical shit people write. Well, let me read it again. It is what it is, Paulie. I don't know what it is. And I don't know, you're calling me Paulie like we're friends or we know each other, which we don't, right? I don't know you. So you say, it is what it is, Paulie. You are who you are. Ought to be more grateful instead of telling us how much you despise our company. Who did I say I despise anybody's company? I never used the word despise. And you know how I feel about hatred as a feeling. It's something you get rid of. Hatred is something that shouldn't exist in a person's inner world. It's been created by an ego. And the unrealistic, the untruthful way we go about accepting the disappointing shit that happens to us, and it's really hatred towards oneself and hatred towards God. The object of your hate is something else, right? It could be Biden, it could be Trump, it could be anything. So hatred is something that in my spiritual system is something that you look for internally as something you have to remove. That it isn't the other person that's responsible for your hatred, it's your hatred, right? They're the object of something that's inside of you. But again, if I said something in the video, I would assume like something that I, couldn't be around Trumpers. Well, that's because I couldn't be. And it isn't because I'm fucked up, right? It's the same way you feel about being around liberals. Like when you see these people, the stuff I just covered with Fetterman, like you get it when I talk about something like that. And so when you see people who are just out and out lying to themselves and lying to everybody else and all these things, right? And again, I'm huge leaps of me trying to fill in the holes of this butthurt comment, right? Because, the person says, you are somebody many of us look up to. Many of us don't know anyone else like you. Yeah, because I'm kind of not adorable. That's what you have to, I'm not a normal social person. And I'm basically just talking to myself. I'm sharing my inner thoughts with you in a way that I wouldn't do in, interpersonal relationships. Like if you were a Trumper, I wouldn't say stuff that would hurt your feelings. I would just go, time for me to move on, right? I have there's nothing in this conversation for me. It's me having to listen to your bullshit that I already am way far beyond, right? Like if you still believe in Trump after this, that's fine. You can do that. That's not my, it's not up to me. You do that. That's you. Like, there's lots of people that believe different things from me, different things than I do. Like almost everybody, even me from myself, right? Like Tuesday's Paul has different beliefs than Wednesday's Paul, right? We all have that. Like beliefs don't really matter to me, but you can't relate to somebody. At this point with Trump, like before, it would have been a little bit different because we didn't see what Trump was going to do in his second term. And, people who bought into it. And if you voted for Trump, you voted for Trump. Who gives a shit? Doesn't matter. Votes are meaningless. They have no effect. So I don't care whether you vote or not. Everyone's got to go through their own situation. But I wouldn't want to hang around with people who are really into Trump. Same way I wouldn't hang around with people that are really into Biden, right? Like, I don't want to listen to that shit, right? I don't have to listen to that shit on my free time. All this stuff that I show you here that I have to endure and mock and things like this. And so, again, I'm assuming this is what this happened with this person because ought to be more grateful instead of telling us how much you despise our company. Well, I haven't been in your company. Like, I have no idea what being in any of your companies like. I've only met a few people who are listening to my videos, right? And so, I don't think you should look up to me, right? Like, that's in itself, like, kind of a weird thing because, I have some insights here. I'm often right about things that have really no meaning and aren't all that important given the collapse of our civilization. And I have some funny jokes here and I have some spiritual elevation from my Sajmark system, but it isn't like, I should never be somebody's goal. Like I could look at my spiritual master and say, that's my goal. I want to be like that. Or that's what it would look like if I was evolved to my fullest spiritual capacity. And so, I might be slightly above you spiritually or something like that on the spiritual path, but I haven't reached the goal. And so you should always try to attain the highest. It should always be you find the highest person, not somebody who's slightly above you or slightly more advanced or whatever, because that's, you can only reach that. Like if you're going to choose someone to be your goal, it should be the person who's reached the pinnacle of spiritual evolution. But in terms of this shit about Trump and these things, he's a piece of shit, like liar, and it's okay that he's, he was entertaining, but now and again, like I said, he's doing God's work by destroying a country that should be destroyed, but still, it's fucking sucky what he's doing, because he's doing it with complete arrogance, and he's just a piece of shit. And if you still are clinging to this idea that he's going to save the world, well, yeah, go ahead. But, I don't expect me to, want to hang out with you or anybody. Just like you wouldn't want to hang out with a Biden person. You wouldn't want to hang out with Chris Hayes for, from pushing Fetterman on all of us when he clearly had enough information to deduce that the guy was not qualified. He didn't have the brain matter and the organic physical function and abilities to do the job that he was, very important job. One out of, 200 senators? Kind of important. He's in charge of committees and shit. And they made him into somebody who's prominent. Like, how many people know Fetterman's name and know only, 3 other senators? Right? Chuck Schumer or whatever it is, right? Like, you might know 5 or 10 different senators. You list people, and one of them would be Fetterman. They put him out there. They promoted him. He was, somebody who was, all those different things, right? And so, again, if this person's a Trumper, because they didn't indicate this, but, somewhere in the video, he interpreted me saying I didn't want to hang out with him personally and took it personally and got butthurt and said these things because I'm talking to myself and I'm telling you what I feel about things in a very it's a very light way. None of this stuff matters to me. As an introvert, I really don't want to hang out with anybody, right? My wife and I get along great, so, there's that. That's basically all I need is for my social life. I enjoy spending time with her. And, my own brother and people like this, people in my family and, all these things. It's, burdensome. Somebody sent me a video. I didn't show it because it's a little bit not great. But it was somebody, this girl got up and she said, it was at her graduation or birthday party, and it said everyone should please leave after something, and she took off all the letters but this thing that said please leave. And people were kind of laughing at it, and this guy got up and said, when introverts, they get drained by being around people. Oftentimes people want to hang out with introverts because they have interesting things to say or whatever it might be. But it's good for introverts. Introverts aren't completely antisocial, but they get drained by being around people. So, there's just all these things, right? But none of those things should mean anything to anybody, because nothing I say here is serious from my end. It's like, it's not gibberish, but it's like, I don't care. Like, look at Fetterman. Look at all this thing that's going on. And again, I had 4 other things I was going to try to squeeze in today on a Sunday, and there's going to be more news on Monday. And, it's a complete fucking mess. The whole fucking, system's a mess. And, Trump is now the chaos agent they're using the people in power are using to take down America, and God is using to take down America. And America should be taken down. So, in a way, he's doing God's work, but that's not what Trumpers are loving about Trump. They think he's actually capable of doing the things he promised, and they can't see through it. And if you mock Democrats, if you're going to look at the videos where I mock Democrats or celebrities, and you're going to totally get them, and you're going to talk about all your fucking liberal relatives and all these people that suck, and people in your life that that you can't stand to talk to, and then don't understand why people don't want to be around you if you're a Trumper, if you believe in any of these things, because there's something beyond all this, which is an understanding that our system's completely fucked and it's unsalvageable and it's bad for us, and it's going to suck when it collapses, but it's the right thing. And that's left-right paradigm stuff. And you want me to soften that statement for your particular thing that you're not strong enough to see the truth, right? Like, instead of being grateful that someone's out there telling you the truth. I lose viewers all the time because of that very reason. Because people, and they never come back. Well, occasionally they do, and they're like, yeah, you were right. I got butthurt and I ran off, and I used to enjoy your videos, and then I thought you said something that offended me, and it turned out I realized you were right all along. Like, something like that, right? And it isn't like that hard to be right, because how easy is it for you to see through Hope Walls or through the coverage of Fetterman or the liberal media, but you just can't see through Trump. You can't, why is that? Like, what's going on inside of you that you are rearranging reality to believe that Trump is, whatever he is, or whatever the thing I said that offended you, like, you heard it as me saying, I don't want to hang out with you. Like, you took it like as a personal, and then telling me I should be grateful, like, for what? Like, you know what I mean? I should be grateful, but to God, not to viewers who are like slumming it, or who are whatever fans because of whatever's going on in their life, right? Because I either have something to offer here or I don't. Either this stuff is worth watching or it isn't. And that's not really up to me. It's just a matter of whether there's an audience or not for it, right? And so there's truth is not really valued. Even if I was wrong about something, it's what I believe to be the truth, and I certainly am not 100% right about every situation, and I might not articulate it great, and it might say something that offends you because you identify with one thing or another, but it shouldn't offend you because I don't really care about it. Like, I'm just, I'm not aiming it personally at anybody, and if I'm wrong about you, it's up for you to assess whether I'm right or wrong, and if you're upset about it, it's because I'm right. You just can't deal with it. You're hearing something. It's like somebody's telling you something. One of the people in your life, a loved one, is telling you something you don't want to hear, and you get pissed off at them. But they're right. They're doing it because they love you, and they're trying to tell you the truth that you can't hear. And instead of being grateful, you turn on them, or you get all, or you do whatever you do. And so, that's why, at a personal level, I wouldn't say anything to anybody, because I don't need other people's anger, and, it's not my fault if you can't handle the truth, right? So why bother telling you? Like, if you're going to have a reaction, I just will, regretfully watch you walk off the cliff like everyone else, because somebody's going to do something, and if the system's going to do what it's doing, the people in the system are all going to, they're all going to walk off the cliff together. Who the fuck am I to stop them, right? Like, if you want to walk over the cliff, like, who am I to stop you, right? I can say, hey, there's a cliff over there, Do you guys see the cliff? No, we don't see the cliff. Fuck you. You know, like, so, I mean, you know, that's not my problem, right? I mean, I think you're all fucked in the head, right? Like, you know, I mean, everybody's crazy. The system produces crazy people. Like, people are messed up. We're not, you know, we're not really highly functioning human beings. We're getting worse. It's idiocracy. We're degrading because of a, you know, demonic system, a disconnect from our, you know, natural selves, the self within, disconnection from God, disconnection from the family, disconnected from organic, healthy foods, organic, healthy lifestyles, and what's natural to be a human being. And we live in these cities and things that make people, I mean, some people in the cities themselves it's worse, you know, and we're eating poison foods and we have toxic shit in our clothing and our, you know, our beds and our, you know, the walls are painted with, you know, everything's emitting, you know, things that are, you know, in low levels of poisonous, taking self-medicating and taking drugs and, you know, all the things that we're doing that are just making us, like, you know, are distorting our perception of reality and our ability to function as people. I mean, that's what we are. That's why I say we're all fucked in the head. It's, you know, it's funny, but it's true. And some people are more fucked than others, but none of us are what we could be if we were in a better system. And so, like, that's the reality of it. And so you're dealing with people who are distorted, and, you know, yourself, your own personal distortion. And when you try to tell them the truth, they turn on you, because that's just how people are, just in general. Because the truth, you know, is that everyone has to change, and no one wants to hear that. I've said this over and over again. And so, you know, I thought this comment was appropriate to end the video with. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Parvano, definitely pointing for the apocalypse. And the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.